On the night of Friday 2nd of August, of 1985, Jannette Johnson attended a birthday celebration at the Party House Bar in Kankakee, Illinois, located about an hour's drive south of Chicago. On Saturday 3 of August between 2:30 and 3 a.m., it would be the last time she would be seen alive.
Crimes and mysteries.
The disappearance of Jannette Johnson. While Jannette Johnson attended to a birthday celebration at the Party House Bar in Kankakee, Illinois, her sister agreed to take care to her daughter of 11-year-old, Jaretha Hampton, and the girl's two cousins. Hampton's aunt had sent the children to bed. However, the children disobeyed the order and got up when they heard Jannette Johnson return home between 2:30 and 3 a.m. The little Hampton ran to her mother's bed and pretended to sleep, to surprise her when she entered the room. But unfortunately she fell asleep and did not wake up until the next day. The last time she heard her mother's keys was at the front door, although Jannette Johnson never entered the house. In later statements, Jaretha Hampton would say, "I miss his hugs. I miss him telling us how much he loved us." Months later, on November 24th of 1985, some deer hunters would come across some bone remains in a rural area of Kankakee County. However, it would take decades to identify and verify to who those remains belonged. In November of 2020, DNA testing performed on the remains found on 24th of November of 1985 showed that the bones found belonged to Jannette Johnson. The Sergeant Detective Logan Anderson of the Kankakee Police Department expressed in statements to the press, "I just want closure, not just for Jaretha Hampton, but for all of her family and friends. She has been dealing with the disappearance of her mother for approximately 39 years." Police investigation. The Sergeant Detective Anderson took charge of Jannette Johnson's case after her daughter Hampton appealed to the public via social media, claiming that law enforcement had not taken the case seriously. Anderson and Siegler, with the help of homicide investigator Steve Spingola and Todd Kerner of the Kankakee Police Department, wanted to get to the bottom of the question of who had possibly murdered Jannette Johnson. Jaretha Hampton recalled that, in the hours previous to the disappearance of her mother, the boyfriend intermittent that had his mother for almost 3 years, Lionel Thomas, visited the house 3 times while Jannette Johnson was at the party. Lionel Thomas supposedly had asked when Jannette Johnson would return from the party. This happened on the night of the disappearance, between Thomas's first and last visit to the house where Jannette Johnson lived. When the children heard that Jannette was returning home, her daughter Hampton and the other children looked out the window and saw Jannette parking her car in the side alley, something common in Jannette Johnson. However, the next day when everyone woke up, the vehicle was parked in front of the house, which seemed somewhat strange to them. Also, the wallet Johnson was on the passenger seat, and they had left a burning cigarette in the car ashtray, leaving a long column of ashes. The keys also were in the car ignition. The fact that Jannette's car was parked in a different location the next morning suggests that someone brought the car back after that she probably was murdered and they disposed of the body. Bone remains were found partially scattered and semi-buried in a shallow grave in a field clearing, which decades later it would be known that they belonged to Jannette Johnson. Kelly Siegler declared to Cold Justice, "But who would do that? And why would they do it?" An investigation by a court in the year 1989. More the intervention of Cold Justice, which had the help of forensic pathologist Catherine Pinnery, concluded that the bone remains found in a field near the property, and that it would later be known that they belonged to Jannette Johnson, probably had suffered a gunshot wound to the head. However, it was not clear whether the alleged gunshot was the cause of death, and the cause of death was ruled a homicide. Neither the bullet nor the shell casing were ever recovered. Since Jannette's car had been moved from the spot where Jaretha had seen it the night before, it is safe to assume that Jannette had traveled in it with her attacker to the field where the bone remains were found. One of the questions that the investigators of the case asked themselves was, they forced her at gunpoint from the door of her house, and she obeyed to protect her children inside the house? Or did someone she knew lure her away under threats to make her leave with him? It did not seem plausible to the team that a random attacker would return the victim's car to the residence. Suspects. Lionel Thomas was a local photographer who lived about 5 or 6 blocks from the victim's home. In analyzing the relationship between Thomas and Jeanette Johnson, the investigators examined a series of letters that Thomas had written to Johnson. According can be seen from the writings and from the witnesses. The couple had plans to attend a Chaka Khan concert just one day after Johnson disappeared. The investigators agreed that the writings suggested that during the relationship, there had been almost total harassment by Lionel Thomas. And after she wanted to end their romance, Thomas would have called Jeanette Johnson like an evil woman with a cold heart. But perhaps the most significant thing and what most caught the attention of researchers is that Thomas apparently became very jealous after Jeanette broke up her relationship with him for the last time. Siegler and the team of investigators spoke again with many witnesses from the night Jeanette Johnson went to the party house, including her friends Charlene Sessions, Patricia Prude, and Roderick Sessions. They also spoke with Jeanette's sister, Jane Lynette Evans, who on the night of the disappearance was doing babysitting, and who had fallen asleep on the couch when Jeanette, her sister, supposedly arrived at the front door. Some of those interviewed by the group of investigators said that Thomas appeared randomly wherever that was Jeanette. While Jeanette Johnson's cousin, Estine Hill, called to Thomas as someone creepy and weird. Still, nothing directly linked Thomas to Jeanette Johnson's murder. In 2021, the Sergeant Detective Anderson asked for the public's help after organizing a new search for possible evidence in the area where hunters discovered Johnson's body. The researcher Spingola clarified that the true reason for that new search was to see if any of the people the police department identified as suspects would turn up, and what their reaction would be to that new search. Lionel Thomas also participated in the search. Gia Wright, of the Missing Persons Awareness Network, told to the investigators that Thomas arrived and walked with her. According to Wright, Thomas said he had been to the area many times, including when he photographed weddings as part of his job. According to Spingola, it would not be unusual for a murderer to hide bodies within his comfort zone. This case dependent basically on what Lionel Thomas tells us. We don't have enough to charge him right now, or charge him with any crime, let's face it, said Spingola. There's plenty of evidence pointing to him, but it doesn't exactly rule out other suspects. Relevant information. The team made that experts performed a new DNA analysis from under Johnson's fingernails, but unfortunately nothing was discovered. They also hoped that visiting Thomas in person would help them close the case. At the time of Johnson's disappearance, Thomas said he saw a light blue car approaching Johnson's home, but soon lost sight of the vehicle. The statement matched other reports from friends who followed leads in Chicago, and claimed that someone driving a blue Ford Granada kept circling the block and watching them. The Sergeant Detective Anderson and Spingola invited Thomas to speak with them in their vehicle, while Siegler and Kerner listened to the interview from another location. Thomas said that Johnson was his first love, and also declared that she just didn't want to get involved with me at the time. Thomas made several conflicting statements, but it was important for investigators to keep in mind that the case was 38 years old. And much of what they had, it was based on the statements of witnesses who at the time were small children. During the interview, Thomas said he had been with Johnson at the party earlier that night, but had left earlier, though no one else could corroborate that detail. He also said that he'd visited Johnson's home only once, as opposed to the 3 times reported by Jaretha Hampton, Jeanette's daughter. Thomas accepted that he walked from his house to Jeanette's, but later said that he was standing next to her car when he saw the blue car stop. Before being confronted about statements made by Gia Wright during the field search in 2021, Thomas denied being in the area more than once, contradicting statements Gia Wright provided to police. "I had no reason to be angry," Thomas said of his relationship with Johnson. Everyone I know loved her, so I have no idea why this happened. The investigators reviewed evidence, including Johnson's parked car, the letters made by Thomas to Jannette, and the contradictory statements of Lionel Thomas to the authorities. Lionel's entire story basically has minor contradictions, but there are no major changes to his version, which is problematic from the prosecution's point of view, said Spingola. Finally, investigators agreed that for now, the case against Lionel Thomas did not meet the requirements to bring it before prosecutors. Thomas would not be charged in connection with the disappearance and homicide of Jannette Johnson. Interesting fact. Something curious about this case is that, although some indications would indicate that Lionel Thomas could be the alleged murderer of Jannette Johnson, the daughter, Joretha Hampton, entered into a relationship with her mother's former boyfriend. Joretha Hampton's late grandmother did not allow the girl to see Lionel Thomas again. But when Hampton turned 18 years old, she would say that Lionel Thomas became a sort of father figure. Hampton told Siegler, "I got so carried away with this man that I lost focus and simply accepted him into my life." Hampton would eventually wonder, if Thomas has something to do with my mother's murder, why did he take it from us and keep me as a souvenir all these years? Finally, the investigators would declare that it's very difficult in a case like this, where there isn't enough probable cause to charge someone, or to try to get a prosecutor to move forward with the investigation. One day something might come along that will make this case solving possible. That's what we're all hoping for. Still, even though the team has been left frustrated by not solving the case, Johnson's daughter will remain hopeful that the case goes forward. She thanked authorities for reopening the investigation. In later statements, Joretha Hampton would say, "There will be no arrests at this time, no problem. My mother wouldn't have given up on us, so I won't give up on her." Thank you all for making it to the end of the video. If you want, you can leave a comment and a like, so that the video reaches many more people. I send you all a big hug, and I hope you have a great day.